Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Hashtag No Limits. Hashtag No Limits is a show on which I interview people who society has placed limits upon, but who have busted through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet that we know who we are, but not who we will be. And I believe that 100%. And I also believe that there is no better example than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. The caterpillar literally has to dissolve into its cells and then reforms into a butterfly. And if that wasn't difficult enough, it also then has to struggle to get out of the cocoon in order for its wings to be strong enough to fly. While that cannot be an easy task, it is certainly not an easy task busting through the limits that society has placed upon a person. And my guest today has busted through an enormous amount of limits that have been placed upon someone with ADHD. Paul, I told you I'm going to mess it up. I don't know why, but for some reason I keep wanting to call him Paul, and his name is Peter. So Peter Shankman, thank you for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Where do I start? I am a born and raised New York City kid. Lived here all my life, with the exception of a few times where I worked or went to school in different places. I'm a single dad to an 8-year-old daughter. I am a corporate keynote speaker who spends pre-COVID was doing about 400,000 miles a year on the road. That's dropped a little bit. I have started and sold 3 companies. I'm a 2-time Ironman triathlon. I am a skydiver with about 500 jumps. What else? I've written 5 books, 4 of which are bestsellers. I have the #1 podcast on ADHD and neurodiversity called Faster Than Normal. And what else? I'm usually up by 3:30 on any given day to exercise before my daughter wakes up, or I don't have as good of a day.
That's amazing. All of those things. But to me, honestly, the most amazing part is that you get up every morning at 3:30 to exercise, because I am starting to enjoy exercise, but it has certainly never been anything that has been a joy or easy for me to do. So kudos to you for doing that. But I understand that you need to do that if you're a triathlete, that you have to keep in shape. You said you've already done 2. Are you training to do more?
I'm always training for something, but I'll be honest with you, the exercise is not so much to stay in shape. The exercise that comes from what you eat. The exercise is because if I don't get a workout in the morning, I don't get the dopamine, the serotonin, and the adrenaline, which is needed to be the best person I could be the best sort of human being. My brain, some people take medication for it. Some people snort illegal drugs for it. I've found that exercise or skydiving or public speaking, I found things that can give me that same level of dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline that quote unquote normal people have. When you're ADHD, it just means your body doesn't produce enough of it. And so you can either take meds to get it, or you can find ways to give it to yourself in other capacities. For me, that's, I biked about 24 miles this morning before my daughter woke up on my Peloton while watching a movie. But that took about an hour and 10 minutes. And that exercise was enough to give me sort of the chemistry I needed to get through the morning. I'll probably do a quick lifting session sometime this afternoon before I go pick her up from school. It is, for me, it's about figuring out what works and then making it work the best way possible.
That's awesome. And there are a lot of people, obviously, this, that are diagnosed with ADHD or ADD. And there are many of them that families or school districts kind of insist that they go on medicine without really checking a lot of other options. Let's talk about when you were growing up, kind of when you knew that there was something accelerated about you, as you say, faster than normal, and how that all kind of transpired in school, and what sorts of things were tried with you, if anything, other than what you're doing now.
Well, I always knew something was up. I always knew it was different. A lot of that was negative, though. I was always getting in trouble. I was always being told to sit down. I had sit down disrupting the class disease. ADHD didn't really exist back in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up. It was, you're causing trouble. You're not sitting still. You're squirmy. You're whatever. That to me was I just thought that was part of life, and that's what I had to deal with. And I was just someone who got in trouble. And over time, as I got older, I realized that it was actually beneficial. I was actually benefiting from the faster brain. It was teaching me how to do things quicker and how to get projects done on deadline and under budget and under time. And I wasn't really diagnosed with ADHD until about 15 years ago, so I was about 35. And all that really did was give me a name to what I had. It was pretty much a given of what I had. That just put a name to it. It's okay, cool. I have a name for it now. I can explain it. But by that time, I had already figured out ways to get through things I didn't want to do. The reason I was always getting in trouble for, being a class clown. When you're a class clown, you're trying to make everyone laugh. When everyone laughs, what happens if they laugh at something you've done? What does that give you? That gives you a shot of dopamine. I didn't realize at the time, what does dopamine help me do? How dopamine helps me sit down and focus. I didn't realize at the time, but I was actually, all the things that I got in trouble for were actually things I was doing to subconsciously to try to help me study, to try to help me sit down and be normal. I think kids still do that today, and we have other ways of, we call it different things, but the fact of the matter is that the things that we do, people with ADHD, people with neurodiverse brains, we do things that are looked at as different, when in fact, if we stopped and thought about it for a second, we realize, hey, this is actually, I get why he's doing this. I get why she's doing this. This is helpful to her. So let's figure out a way to channel that in a better way. And that was sort of, knowing that now, I know I've sort of set up rules of how to live my life in such a way that I don't have to deal with those problems anymore.
Yeah. So growing up, it sounds like you're about the same age as myself. So the special education law came into effect right around the time you probably started school, based on what you've said. So did you receive any special education services?
No. The only thing I got was extra time on tests. And the reason for that was because to receive special ed in New York City, or to receive assistance in New York City, education assistance, you need to show a hardship in terms of the basic core subjects, your reading, your math, your English, your social studies. Math was really the only thing I had an issue with. My reading, I was reading on a college level since third grade. And so because of that, I never qualified for a resource room or for reading enhancements or anything like that. And so I just had to deal with it. I had to suck it up. There wasn't resources or help or aid for someone with ADHD. It wasn't a thing. And so, right. It'd be one thing if I couldn't read. If Johnny can't read, they put him in a room and help him read. I was reading. I was, in fact, that's what I was doing. I'd get in trouble because I wouldn't be paying attention to class. I'd be reading a book. So yeah, it was kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, it was, I'm thinking it was funny in hindsight, but maybe not.
No, it certainly wasn't funny at the time. I'd come home with a note every day from the teacher. That wasn't fun. But, the concept of learning sort of what I did and looking back on it now, it's hysterical. The fact that I was cracking jokes, because I was trying to learn and didn't even realize it it's kind of funny when you think about it.
It is kind of funny. And it's also very intuitive on your part to know that you needed that, but not know that that's what you needed and why you were doing what you were doing. And so how did your parents handle you getting all of these notes from home? Sounds like constantly.
Yeah. Notes from school to home. I was getting in trouble. I was getting grounded a lot. I think we sort of just adapted, okay, this is how Peter is. We'll try to figure this out. I was seeing a therapist or whatever, but it really started kicking in for me. I started getting my sea legs, as it were, after I got out of college. And I worked for 2 years for America Online, 3 years for America Online. And I left AOL and I moved back to New York. And with no experience whatsoever, I decided to start a company. I decided to start a PR firm. My parents thought I was crazy. And within 6 months, I was doing better than I'd ever done in any job or school or whatever. And that, I think, was the moment when I realized, okay, this is what I'm destined to do. There were no entrepreneurs in my family at all. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it really came back to realizing, okay, this works for me. And I can set up the rules and discipline I need this way and enjoy it more. And so once I started doing that, that was it. I realized that's how I was going to run. That's how I was going to do everything from then on. And my parents got it. And they understood it, and they realized, okay, yeah, he definitely walks to the beat of a different. I mean, my mother always said that I walk to the beat of a different drummer. This way, I was allowed to showcase not only that I walked to the beat of a different drummer, but that it paid off. I remember when I sold my first company, I sold my PR firm back in the late 90s. My parents couldn't believe it. And then, I consulted for a while and then eventually sold another one. And then I sold my third one, Help a Reporter Out, which sort of changed everything for me. And that was, by that point, my parents and I were just like, okay, yeah, that's him. He's like that. It's cool. Let him be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was actually, I think that may have been how I found out about you, was through the Help a Reporter Out. Someone told me about it, and then I've been involved with it for several months now and have had a couple of quotes in different things and waiting for one now with U.S. News and World Report. So thank you for starting that. So what gave you the idea for that? Can you explain it first of all, and then what gave you the idea for it?
Help a Reporter is a simple email newsletter that goes out 3 times a day to, I think, about 1.2 million people. And it allows you receive queries from the media. And if you can answer any of those queries, you simply reply to the reporter and you can get quoted in the media. It's incredibly simple. It's incredibly easy. By the time I started it, it was, it's a free service. It still is. When I started it, it was, I think we had about 500,000 people in 6 months using it, and I was selling a small little text ad at the top of each email, which was generating a lot of revenue because it had a huge open rate. So it's free publicity, essentially. And it was acquired 3 years after I started it by a company called Cision, or Vocus, now Cision / PR Newswire. And for me, it was this idea that I talk to everyone. When you're ADHD, if you're on a plane next to me, unless you fake your death, I want to know everything about you by the time we land. And that's great. I love that. But, what that gave me was this huge Rolodex. And reporters would call me and say, hey, we're doing a story on whatever. Who do you know? And, oh, yeah, call this guy, call that guy. And it started taking longer and longer. Sorry, my dog's being really quiet. Whenever he's really quiet for long, I have to look over and make sure he's not destroying something. I would say, yeah, call this person. And it started taking longer and longer, taking my whole day to figure this out. I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I built a website. I built an email newsletter, and it just sort of blew up. And it worked. It was a good idea that turned into a great company. And when it was acquired, it was it was sort of a game changer for me. It was exciting. It was exciting to be able to do something that really to this day still helps so many people.
Yeah. So how long ago did you start it, and how long ago did you sell it?
I launched it in, I think, April or March or something of 2007, and it was acquired in June of 2010. So it took 3 years.
So it's 2007. So it's been around for 15 years. That's quite incredible. And it is such a simple thing. I mean, you just look at the topics of all and they're broken down into categories. I just specifically go to the education category. I don't even really look at the rest of them because I figure I'm not going to know anything in those categories anyway. Well,
you never know. That was the thing. For me, is people would find, I'd never paid to get publicity about fly fishing, but I happen to be a fly fisherman, and here's someone looking for fly fishing. Let me, So it sort of filled a lot of holes. The nice thing for most people, I think that people enjoyed the most, was that they could forward the queries to their friends. So
yes.
I remember one guy came to me. He's like, "Hey, I got my girlfriend. She's my girlfriend now because I really liked her, and I forwarded her a query from Vogue saying looking for women who are beautiful, and she was really impressed. So I'm dating her now." It was really
nice.
Fun. But yeah,
nice.
It was a definite one of those things that really sort of blew up and changed for a lot of people's lives, including mine.
Yeah, and absolutely the marketing side of it. I mean, I also am a published author and have my own business and trying to get my name out there. Because I can work anywhere in the country. And so, a couple of times it's been like, oh, hey, I can put that I've been quoted in this article or that article. And and you never know who's reading all of those articles. And I mean, the companies that use, do you say Harrow or do you always say Help a Reporter Out?
I call it Harrow. It's I explain what Help a Reporter Out is, but I always call it Harrow. And yeah, I mean, it's the amount of people that use it now it's still just mind blowing to me. But again, you have to know yourself, right? I sold it at the right time. I could have built it up, held it for another 15 years, and made it huge. But that would have required a lot more work, and it would have required me being more of a manager. And I suck at being a manager. I'm great at ideas, and I know that about me. And you have to, when you have a neurodiverse brain, you have to know yourself and you have to know what you're great at and what you're not great at, what you can do and what you can't do. And so for me, understanding that I am terrible at certain things and really, really good at certain things. Once you understand that, there's a reason my assistant, she took right access to my calendar away from me about well over 10 years ago. I can't schedule anything on my own. I have to go through her.
Wow.
Because she didn't even tell me she did it. I went to put something in the calendar and it wasn't working. And I'm like, something's wrong. She's like, no, everything's working perfectly. You'll go through me. I'm like, that's really rude. And she said, I'm like, why did you do that? She goes, you booked 2 dinners on the same night. I'm like, that's not that big. She knows you booked them on separate continents. You're done. And I haven't had access to my calendar. And as much as I bitched about it, it was actually the 100% the right move because I am terrible at scheduling. And that's her job. That's what I pay her to do. And so, allowing her to do that, I've learned that you find people who are great at what you suck at, and you let them do their job, and life will be a lot easier.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm finding that, especially in the business world, that if you're not good at something, it's better to hire someone to do it for you than to struggle and spend countless hours that you could be working on.
No question about it. I mean, there's no point. How much is your time worth, right? I look at the things that, I enjoy, every once in a while I'll go on a cleaning binge and I'll throw a whole bunch of stuff out and I'll purge and all that. That's great. But I'm not going to clean my bathroom every week like you should. So I hire someone to do that because they're going to do it better than me. And that's worth the money to come home to a clean apartment. It's mentally, it's worth the money. And financially, it's worth the money because I can be doing something else and making more money that way. Right.
So thinking about, and I just realized the sweatshirt that I'm wearing, and I will probably pronounce this wrong, but I think it's Takiwai Tanga, which is the from a neurodiversity. It's called the ND Renegade.
ND Renegade. Yeah, I've had her on the podcast.
Yeah. And I didn't even think about that when I put this on this morning, that I would be interviewing you and how appropriate that would be. But
she's awesome. I had her on the podcast. She's a lot of fun. We've done some good stuff together.
Yeah. I had her also on hashtag No Limits a while ago. And I had her little girl on with her as well. And they were both just amazing. But so at what point, or what advice would you give to somebody? Let's go that way. What advice would you give to a young person who is finding themselves in a situation that you were in grade school or maybe middle school or high school of, maybe they don't have that diagnosis and they're just constantly in trouble, or they're constantly feeling like they're always needing to move, but they can't?
Well, the first thing you got to know is you're not broken. Right. There's nothing wrong with you, quote unquote. It's a system that doesn't allow for people who are different to flourish. And so you have to flourish on your own. Understand that you're not broken. Understand that you have talents and nurture them. Figure out what they are and work on pushing those talents to the best of your ability. They are there. They exist. You have to figure out what you can do to bring them out in such a way that people are not taken aback by you and not sort of weirded out. And my whole thing was, I was always a great talker. I could always make people laugh, but I didn't know when to pull back. And so I was always overcompensating and trying too hard. And that was terrible for any kind of social life that I wanted to have. So, when in doubt, shut up and listen, but understand that you're not broken and that your talents, they might not have found themselves yet, but they're going to come in tremendously handy as you get older.
Yeah, and I love that you talk about it as a superpower. And I actually had opportunity to be on your podcast. I think our episode aired last week or the week before. Mm-hmm. And we talked about, that a lot of people with ADD or ADHD are great at multitasking. Yep. And, the fact that, you are the idea bringers, and specifically you, but not everyone. And so finding those things are so key to feeling okay about who you are, because I do think our education system does a really, really, and as you can see, I'm a teacher by trade originally, and I felt like too often kids who just had that motor that was always going, and it was faster than normal, were made
it's not easy.
Feel like they were broken.
It's not easy because there are, like I said, there are a lot of, you have to understand there are a lot of things about the way your brain works that is going to encourage you to do things that are not considered, quote unquote, normal. You know, I have a tendency to, if I'm sitting in a restaurant or something, I hear someone talking about something at the next table. If I can offer a piece of information they might have gotten wrong or didn't know, I used to always want to do that, you know, and my brain would be like, you got to tell them. And I'd be like, but why? And my brain's like, you just gotta, you know, and there's no real answer for that. And so I've worked really hard on sort of reeling that in. But yeah, it's definitely a freak of nature in that regard. But again, there's so many positives at it, you know. Like I said, having a Rolodex filled with thousands of contacts, all of whom are willing to help and do what I ask of them because they are used to, you know, they understand me and they understand that, yeah, he knows everyone. If I take his call, it's probably going to be beneficial to me. So it's really about that. It's about understanding how that works.
Yeah, I'm so in awe and so encouraged, I guess is the right word, by you. And I'm thinking about so many students that I have worked with in my own teaching career, but now as an education consultant and master IEP coach, going out and helping families and helping students in other school districts. And I just think so much of what you have gone through is helpful to kids right now. And I actually, to be honest, I have one particular one in mind. And what are some things that you were encouraged, or were you ever encouraged, since you really weren't receiving special education services, to kind of, what path did they kind of encourage you to follow?
I think it was my parents. My parents like, just do your own thing. You know, you're going to figure it out eventually. Just go do. They never, you know, they never stopped loving me, and they always told me that I could do whatever I wanted. I had to put my mind to it. So I knew that there was a lot of crap that I was dealing with, but I also knew that, you know, through their knowledge, it would get better. I didn't always believe them, but it definitely proved itself to work. You know, again, I think that I'm fortunate for the way that I grew up. It wasn't always easy. It sucked a lot. I'm not going to lie about that, but it was also beneficial in terms of where I ended up. And so I think that what kids need to know, what adults need to know, even, you know, 'cause a lot of adults are getting diagnosed with ADHD now and neurodiverse conditions. They need to understand that a diagnosis of something, and I hate the term diagnosis, because, you know, you're diagnosed with bad things. You're diagnosed with cancer. You're diagnosed with, you know, muscular dystrophy. You're not diagnosed. No one's ever diagnosed as a lottery winner. No one's ever diagnosed as dating a supermodel. And so I think that
right.
If I look at ADHD as a benefit, I don't consider it a diagnosis. I consider it a gift. And so understanding that it's not so much a diagnosis, it's just understanding that your brain's a little different. And knowing that your brain's a little different should allow you to work better, knowing that you can do things that other people can't. And if you train yourself to do, you know, again, do I want to get up at 3:30 every morning and work out? Absolutely fucking not. No, I love, you know, I'm a huge fan of sleep, but I also know that if I want to be at my best, that's what I have to do. And so I've made the decision, in order to do that, I go to bed early, right? I get up, I go to sleep. So my daughter's out by 8:00. I'm out by 8:30 most nights. And so, you know, is that, I've been doing that for years now. And is that what everyone else does? No, but I don't really give a crap what everyone else does because it works for me. Yeah. I think the biggest thing I learned from my ADD and my ADHD at the end of the day is that it doesn't matter what other people think. The only people that it really mattered, my girlfriend, my daughter, my parents, that's it. After that, I'm pretty much good. I don't really care what most people think. And I'm living my life the way that works for me.
Yeah. How long did it take you, though, to come to that conclusion?
I'm still fighting it every day.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always perfect. I'm getting better every day, but I'm still fighting it. You know, there are days when I know I'm still different and I know, oh, I should have been that. You know, imposter syndrome is a real thing. And when you're ADHD, it's that much worse. Imposter syndrome is huge. And so I'm constantly, you know, there's a company I work very closely with, very, very large company I work very, very closely with, is putting out a new conference. And the conference is exactly about what I talk about. And I just saw the first notice and I was not part of the 3 keynotes. And I said, I emailed my contact there. I'm like, wow, this is exactly. She's like, I know it's not you this year. It's that we still want you. We're probably gonna use you next year. Don't worry. But in my mind, I'm reading it as well. That's it. I ruined the relationship. They're never going to hire me again. I have to go, I might as well quit and go live under a bridge. And so you're constantly fighting that. It never truly goes away.
Yeah. I can imagine that. I have anxiety and I have the same kind of feelings when, I think somebody should have hired me or asked me to do something and they didn't. And I think, oh, okay, why not? What did I do wrong? And it is a constant battle in my own mind as well. And so is there anything that you would say to educators as far as, okay, if you have a child that is probably on the ADHD, ADD track, what suggestions would you have for them? What would you like to?
I understand how difficult it is to teach 26 12-year-olds and have one kid who is different. And no one is suggesting that's easy. And I don't envy that. But you have to figure out a way to allow that kid to grow at his or her own way. And it could be simple things. Maybe it's as simple as letting them sit in the back of the class and get up every 5 minutes and just stand up or do a squat or just stand up. Something as simple as giving them a little dopamine, as opposed to having them put in the front class where you can quote unquote watch them, where they're going to be under that microscope and they're just going to wind up acting out. Look at what works for them and see if there's a way you can incorporate what works for them into their daily routine and your daily routine. And again, I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that teachers are being asked to do 10 times more with 5 times less. And I know how hard it is. Both my parents were teachers for 40 years apiece. They retired as NYU professors after 35 years apiece in the New York City public schools. So I get it. I'm a New York City public school kid. I get it. But I don't want to see kids going through their educational career the same way I did, just being told they're broken and different and wearing out the tiles between their homeroom and the principal's office. Yeah.
And I still see that quite a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that teachers are deliberately doing it wrong. I don't think they are. I just think that we have to do better. The system has to do better as a system, right? We can't let the system win. The system has to be changed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So on your show, Faster Than Normal, you start with your introduction and you talk about all these different entrepreneurs and celebrities and athletes that have ADHD. Would you mind sharing some of the names just as a way to encourage anyone who is listening today to my show and thinking, oh yeah, well, that's just Peter, it's just him. He's the only one who's been successful like that with ADHD.
Just people on the show off the top of my head. The band Shinedown, the deputy mayor of Boston, Massachusetts. What's his name? Tony Robbins, Seth Godin, Keith Crotch, who is the founder of DocuSign and the undersecretary of Commerce. Who else? Rachel Cotton, who's a PhD candidate. She's got her PhD from Harvard last year. She's one of the top neuroscientists in the country. Who else have we had that's pretty cool? Had a 4-time New York Times best-selling author who wrote the book on football concussions that the movie, and I'm spacing on the name, the movie that starring Will Smith came out based on that book. The list just goes on and on and on. If you go back in history, pretty much anyone who's ever done anything great. I mean, you can tell me that the cast of Hamilton back in the 1700s, Alexander Hamilton said, okay, we're going to go over there and start a new country. And the king will probably kick our asses and kill us, but we're going to do it anyway. Come on, you don't have a normal brain to do that shit. So it's anyone who's ever done anything of any consequence chances are had a neurodiverse brain. it's one of the things I love about my skydiving. I was down in Zephyr Hills, Florida this weekend jumping out of planes, and it's just so much fun to talk to people at the drop zone while you're waiting for the plane to land or waiting to go up in the air or whatever, because it's like you're home with your people. We're all like that, and it's just so much fun. It's, we're all thought of as weird and strange, and the people who don't skydive we call them woofos, as in woofo, you jumping out of a good plane like that. It is a phenomenal display of, we know how we feel when we land. Someone grabbed a photo of me. My girlfriend came down with me for the weekend. She grabbed a photo of me coming back from a jump. It's on my Facebook page. I'm just happy, right? And I'm rarely looking that happy. And it's just this feeling of pure, because I'm high as a goddamn kite. I mean, I have more serotonin, dopamine, and adrenaline flowing through my system after I land on a skydive than virtually anything else. I dated another neuroscientist. For some reason, I did a lot of neuroscientists. And I dated a neuroscientist once back in the early 2000s. And when I first started skydiving, I started in 2006, 2007. And she did a test on me. She took my blood the morning of when I woke up, when I wanted to go to the drop zone. Took a couple of drops. And she took another drop of my blood when we got to the drop zone. And then took another vial of blood when I landed from a skydive. And she said, when you woke up, you're pretty normal. So when you got to the drop zone, you were very sort of high strung is the best way to put it. She goes, the blood that we took when you landed, she goes, you were essentially a molecule away from having an being on an all-out coke binge. She goes, you were high as a kite. And she goes, and that was entirely, she goes, your brain fired all the dopamine, all the serotonin, all the adrenaline it had. And I'm like, that's fascinating. I'm like, is that why people do drugs? And she goes, well, the difference is that when people do cocaine, the brain doesn't know sort of how much cocaine it's getting so it fires all the dopamine, all the serotonin, all the adrenaline, including the reserves that it keeps for emergencies, which is why you have that, I guess people who do drugs have that crash, right? Mm-hmm. When I skydive, I don't have a crash because my brain says, okay, we're going to fire all the dopamine, keep him alive, but we're going to keep that little bit of reserve in case as he's free falling, he encounters a saber-toothed tiger and he needs more. Right. And so when I don't use that last little bit, I get to the ground, I'm fine. That last little bit is enough to keep me from that crash. On the plus side, I sleep really, really well after a day of skydiving. So it's like the perfect, anything like that, skydiving, public speaking, Ironman triathlons, that for me is the perfect drug, right? It's the perfect medication to get you where you want to be and keep you going. So I enjoy those things for that reason and so many others. But yeah, it's nice to be among your own as well.
Yeah, well, I have wanted to skydive for many years, attempted to twice, 2 years ago, and then once again last year, and both times weather canceled it out. So I'm hoping this July with a group of people that I will get to have that experience. So when you say a day of skydiving, do you skydive once or do you?
I'll go up. I'll do 4, 5, 6 jumps in a day.
Wow. I'm hoping to be able to get one in.
Well, the difference also is you're jumping attached to someone. I have my own gear. Yes. I just get on the plane and I go.
Right.
That's the fun part for me, and that is the additional fun part is flying down to Florida with a parachute on my back, getting on the United Airlines plane, and everyone's looking at me going. And I usually I'm like, depending on the kind of mood I'm in, I'll be like, oh, pilot and I went out last night. We got really fucked up, but I'm sure he's fine.
Oh my goodness. So you had put out, I think it was a blog, or maybe it was just a Facebook post, or maybe it was in your email that I received, about how when you jump, you need to be scared, that you would be worried about yourself if you weren't scared or a little fearful of the jump. And I so appreciate you talking about the fact that it is important to go through a fear like that. Because I think probably a large part of your life you've had to do that.
For me, it's the day I'm not scared of skydiving is the day I don't jump, because then there's something wrong. Our bodies were given fear receptors and the things that go with them for a reason. When we were out as cavemen hunting saber-toothed tigers, and we saw one, we knew we had to kill it or we wouldn't eat. And so our fear would take over, but we wouldn't let it run our lives. We would use that fear. The fear being that scared does several things. It dilates your pupils so you can see better. It pushes the blood to the lower extremities so you can run faster. It does all these things. And It still does that millions of years later. Evolution's awesome. Problem is, we don't often encounter saber-toothed tigers, especially ones that if we don't kill, we won't eat and we'll starve. So,
Right.
it's pretty hard it's harder to utilize your fear for good when you can just run down to McDonald's, right? As a caveman, you didn't have a choice, right? If you didn't catch that saber-toothed tiger or whatever, you weren't eating. You were going to starve, and your family was going to starve, and then your lineage would stop. And so, the premise of utilizing your fear is something that's been long since taken away. There's a great book. We had him on the podcast. Scott, spacing on his last name. He wrote a book called That Which Doesn't Kill You. And it's all about facing the fear, but specifically he talks about the concept of cold. And he learns how to hike mountains in the Himalayas and the Andes in nothing but a t-shirt and shorts.
Oh my gosh.
Whereas if he's not feeling cold, he's not cold. And there's a whole couple of chapters on that about cold showers. And I've been embracing cold showers for years. The interesting thing about taking a cold shower is the second you switch the water to cold. So you take a hot shower, you wash your hair or whatever. And then for the last minute or two, it's ice cold. And what happens when you do that is your body instinctively freezes. Not freezes from cold, freezes up, like stops working essentially. And the goal of that is to protect you, It shuts you down so it protects your heart. Your heart has to beat lower. It can, save your blood up. But the problem there is that you get what's called cold frozen, which is where it's how people drown because they feel their breath being sucked out of them when they fall into a cold lake or whatever. And then what's interesting is that if you can get past the first 15 seconds of being cold frozen, you'll be fine. People drown because they feel like they don't have breath. Oh, I can't breathe. It's so cold. No, that's your body deliberately reacting because it's not used to that cold. Get through that and you'll adapt, right? Every year I do the polar bear swim in Coney Island. And you watch all these people, the second they dive under the water, they come up and they can't breathe, right? If you can just chill and let your body adapt, your body's really good at adapting. And the beauty of it is I'll do 2 minutes in an ice cold shower. I'll get out. And everything is clearer, right? Because I just told my body, I put my body deliberately into a flight or fight moment. And now that I don't need it anymore because I'm out of the shower and there's no one trying to kill me, all that dopamine, serotonin, it's still there. So I'll just let it simmer and everything will be sharper, right? I'll be more on point. I can wake my daughter up with a smile, all that kind of stuff. Same thing with exercise. So really it is about knowing yourself and that which doesn't kill you does in fact make you stronger. And if you can get used to that, I've yet to convince anyone in my life to get used to taking the last 2 minutes of their showers ice cold. But I'm telling you, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I may try it, but because my biggest fear in life is actually drowning. So
there you go.
I mean, that would be huge for me to be able to overcome that. So yeah, it's something that has intrigued my brain for sure. I can't promise you that I'm going to do it, but I will think about it for sure. I appreciate that tidbit of information. I'm trying to think. I feel like there were so many other questions that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm kind of looking down my list. In your bio on your website, it says that you're a social media rock star. And so you want to talk about that a little bit?
New York Times gave me that quote, gave me that label when they quoted me in an article years ago. But yeah, I mean, I've been one of the things about ADHD is you're naturally curious. And so I've constantly been at the forefront of tech. I have my own cryptocurrency coin right now. It's called Shank. It's trading about $4.80 a coin or something like that. I've been in Web3 in the metaverse for years now, before it was called that. For me, it's just about finding this is interesting. Let's learn all about it. And because of the ADHD, you pick 6 hours, go down a rabbit hole, you come out, you know everything. So it's another benefit of this different brain I have.
It's awesome. That is so, so awesome. And I love that you have truly accepted it as a gift and you've truly embraced all the wonderful parts about it. Because, and you and I talked when I was on your podcast a little bit about, society and what society thinks are appropriate behaviors, because we talked about my behavior management system.
Yeah.
And it truly is, that what I will accept as appropriate and what the teacher across the hall will accept as appropriate could be two very different things. And, that is something that I've worked with my students on. And I'm guessing that is something that you have noticed too. And now that you have become an entrepreneur all those years ago, you don't have to worry quite so much about what your boss will accept because you are your boss.
I am. I'd say on the flip side, though, my boss has to be an asshole, because if my boss doesn't put those rules down that I have to follow, I'm going to wind up in trouble.
Right.
So it's good to be my own boss, but I wouldn't wish anyone else working for me. They wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I've often said that, and I love those little things on Facebook that come up about, if you see me talking to myself, I'm just having a business conversation with my business partner, or something like that. Yep. To where, I often say that, sometimes my boss is the biggest B that I know, because he's so hard on me. But, it has to happen that way in order to be successful. So
no question about it.
Peter, one last encouragement for students going through it, for adults just finding out, and then I'm going to let you go.
Imagine driving a Honda, like a little Accord, your entire life, and then one day someone gives you a Lamborghini. That is such a fun car, and you're going to have such a blast driving it, but just spend the time learning how to drive it first, because if you drive it like a Honda, you're going to crash into a tree within 5 seconds. It's much more powerful than that. Your brains are incredibly powerful, and you've been using them at Honda speeds for all your life. Now, take the aprons off, and you're really going to have some fun with it, but learn how to do it first.
Awesome. Peter, thank you. And I wanted to make sure I emphasized your name and said it right that time. I apologize for saying it wrong in the beginning. I don't know why I wanted to change your name, but I so appreciate your time and everything that you are doing. I appreciate those words of encouragement. Thank you, everyone who has tuned in, and tune in next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Hey, parents and teachers, are you tired of IEP meetings that feel like a battle? Let's put an end to the tension and create a collaborative, calm, and respectful environment together. Shelley Keno, your go-to IEP consultant, can transform your meetings into positive and productive experiences. With Shelley Keno, your child is her top priority, your voice is heard, and you become confident. Shelley Keno is making the world better for all, one IEP at a time. Visit www.shelleykeno.com for more information and set up your free 20-minute consultation today. That's shelleykeno.com, SHELLEYKENOW.